Becky, no way you're still using that old phone from 2018. Harrison, my brother, laughed while showcasing his sleek new iPhone as we gathered around the Christmas tree in my parents' living room in Portland, Oregon. Seriously, it's like a relic. I'm Becky Jett, 28, and I've long held the title of family disappointment. While my siblings indulged in designer clothes, high-end gadgets, and fancy meals, I pinched pennies, shopped at thrift stores, and resided in a small studio outside town. What they failed to grasp was that every dollar I saved was an investment in something far larger than they could fathom. It still makes calls and texts, I replied calmly, stowing my old phone in my used purse. That's all I need. Brenda, my sister, rolled her eyes as she adjusted her new Cartier watch. At 28, you dress like you're raiding Grandma's closet. Don't you want nice things? The familiar wave of judgment swept through the room, a pattern I was used to by now. My mother, Margaret, sighed heavily while arranging expensive ornaments on the tree. Honestly, Becky, it's sometimes embarrassing when people ask about my daughters. Brenda's got a marketing job at a big firm and drives a BMW. And then there's you, with your part-time jobs and coupon cutting. My dad, David, nodded from his leather recliner. We raised you better than this. There's being sensible with money, and then there's whatever this is. You act like you're living through the Great Depression. Harrison smirked while swiping through his pricey tablet. Remember when she took her own tea bags to that fancy restaurant for my birthday? The waiter was so confused. The laughter that followed felt like tiny needles against my skin, but I had grown accustomed to it. They couldn't see the purpose behind my sacrifices or the ridicule I endured while they lived paycheck to paycheck despite their higher incomes. As they accumulated debt to maintain their lifestyles, I was quietly building something remarkable during the hours after my part-time jobs. I'm doing just fine, I said gently, observing as Harrison's girlfriend, Kelly, joined in on the mockery by flaunting her designer shoes, which cost more than my grocery budget for the month. Little did they know that Harrison would soon stumble upon a revelation that would turn their world upside down. The phone they laughed at was about to unveil a secret that would transform their mockery into desperate pleas and their disdain into shocked silence. The teasing continued as we moved to the dining area for dinner. Brenda took to photographing her lavish meal for social media, while pointing out that I had brought my own bottled water instead of opting for the sparkling kind my mother offered. Becky's always been different, Margaret explained to Kelly as if I weren't even there. Even as a kid, she saved her allowance instead of spending it like other kids. We thought she'd outgrow it. But here we are. I picked at my dinner, recalling the countless evenings spent working on my project rather than socializing. While my family attended overpriced concerts and took extravagant vacations they couldn't genuinely afford, I dedicated my nights in my tiny apartment to coding and developing what would eventually become the most successful budgeting app of the decade. The worst part, David added, slicing into his prime rib, is that she has a computer science degree. She could have a real job at a tech company, but instead she works part-time at that bookstore and freelances. It seems like she's wasting her potential. What they didn't realize was that my freelance work was the development and maintenance of Frugal Smart, an app one created that has helped millions manage their finances effectively. The irony was not lost on me, considering my family, who needed financial guidance the most, didn't know their so-called embarrassing daughter had crafted the very solution they required. Harrison pulled out his phone to show Kelly pictures from his extravagant ski trip to Aspen. This cost me $8,000, but you only live once, right? He glanced at me with pity. Becky probably thinks I'm insane for spending that much on a vacation. I believe you should spend your money on what makes you happy, I replied, not mentioning that his $8,000 trip was less than my daily passive income from the app. Kelly looked at me with curiosity. What kind of freelance work do you do, Becky? Just app development, I said simply, not wanting to dive into details that would seem too complicated and unbelievable for them. Oh, like making games. Brenda dismissed. That's cute. Margaret shook her head sadly. We wish she'd find a nice man with a steady career who could show her how to enjoy life a bit. The conversation continued around me, each remark adding to the pile of misconceptions they had about my life. They saw my thrift store attire and second-hand furniture and concluded I was struggling, mistaking my modest lifestyle for failure. What they couldn't see was the empire I was building one line of code at a time. After dinner, we gathered in the living room for gift exchanges. I watched as my family unwrapped pricey gifts they had splurged on for one another using credit cards they were still wrestling with, while I offered modest but meaningful gifts. Homemade cookies, a second-hand book, and a knitted scarf. "These cookies are surprisingly good," Harrison admitted as he took his third. "Did you bake it in that ancient oven of yours?" "The same one," I nodded, amused at his inability to imagine that someone might choose simplicity rather than being forced into it by circumstance. As the evening drew to a close, Harrison excused himself for the bathroom. I left my phone charging on the kitchen counter, and without a second thought, he picked it up, presumably to hand it to me. However, the screen lit up with my banking app still open from when I checked my balance earlier. From the living room, I observed his expressions shift from confusion to disbelief, and then to shock. He stared at the screen for a moment, his mouth slightly open before calling out for me. "Becky, can you come here for a second?" The tone of his voice made the rest of the room take notice, exchanging glances as they anticipated yet another tale of my frugality. I stepped into the kitchen, already aware of what Harrison had seen. My banking app displayed my account balance, $12,347,892.73. Below it were notifications detailing my daily earnings from Frugal Smart, updates on my investment portfolio, and transfer confirmations from my business accounts. "Is this real?" Harrison whispered, his hands trembling as he held up my phone. "This can't be possible." Calmly took my phone back. "What's the issue?" "The money, Becky. You have $12 million, he stammered. "How is that even possible?" The living room fell silent. I felt everyone's focus shift to the kitchen, realizing that something significant was unfolding. Harrison's face drained of color. "All this time we thought you were struggling, too proud to seek help, that we needed to worry about you. But you're rich." The moment hung in the air like a fragile bubble. I could feel my mother's sharp intake of breath from the living room, sensing a shift as Harrison's revelation took root. This was the moment everything would change, where my long-kept secret would shatter their misconceptions. "What did you just say?" Margaret's voice sliced through the silence as she stepped into the kitchen, with David and Brenda right behind her. The color had drained from her face as she looked between Harrison and me. Harrison held up my phone again, his hands shaking. "Mom, Dad, you need to see this. Becky has $12 million. $12 million. The kitchen erupted into chaos. Brenda pushed past everyone to grab my phone, her eyes widening in disbelief. "This must be fake. There's no way, Becky. Is this some sort of prank?" "Give me that," David demanded, snatching the phone from Brenda's grasp. His reading glasses slid down his nose as he scrutinized the screen. "These numbers can't be real." I stood calmly amidst the chaos, observing as my family processed information that contradicted everything they'd believed about me. Margaret gripped the counter, her knuckles white. "Becky, explain this right now. Where did this money come from?" "I developed an app," I stated simply. "And it's been quite successful." "An app?" Harrison's voice rose. "What kind of app generates $12 million? "A budgeting app called Frugal Smart. Maybe you've heard of it," I replied. The ensuing silence was deafening. Recognition flickered across their faces. Frugal Smart wasn't just any app. It was the one that had been highlighted on every major financial news outlet, the one that disrupted the personal finance industry and received endorsements from celebrities and economic experts alike. Brenda's jaw dropped. "Are you saying you created Frugal Smart? The app Oprah mentioned, the one on Time magazine's cover?" "Yes," I confirmed, reclaiming my phone from David's slack grip. Margaret staggered back against the wall, bewildered. "But you live in that tiny apartment. You shop at thrift stores. You clip coupons like someone who knows the value of money." "I practice what I preach." The app teaches people to spend below their means and to save and invest wisely, I replied. Harrison began running his hands through his hair, pacing. All this time, while we were giving you advice about getting your life together, you were sitting on $12 million? Yes, I corrected him. While you mocked my lifestyle choices and labeled me an embarrassment. David's businessman facade fell apart. Becky, honey, if we had known, you would have treated me differently, I interrupted. Exactly. Which is why I kept it a secret. Kelly, who had been quiet throughout this revelation, finally spoke. So when Harrison spent $8,000 on that ski trip, you could have covered it without even blinking? He nodded. I make more than that in daily passive earnings from the app. The room fell silent once more, the implications sinking in. All the jokes about my old phone, the comments on my thrift store outfits, and every display of pity for my supposed struggles had been rooted in a complete misunderstanding of my circumstances. Brenda's expression shifted from shock to calculation. Becky, this changes everything. Or family. Family supports each other. I raised an eyebrow. Support each other. Like how you supported me by calling my lifestyle embarrassing at every family gathering. That was different. Margaret quickly interjected. We just wanted what was best for you. What's best for me apparently wasn't good enough for you, I replied. Until you discovered it came with a bank balance you approved of. The transformation in their demeanor was both immediate and nauseating. Within moments of learning about my wealth, the same individuals who'd spent years mocking my choices were suddenly overflowing with praise and newfound concern for me. You know what, Becky? I've always admired your discipline, David began, adopting a tone I never thought I'd hear. Your mother and I were just talking about how wise you are to live so modestly. I had to stifle a laugh at the blatant falsity. Really? Because just 30 minutes ago, you said my way of life was embarrassing. Margaret hurried to say. We were just concerned, sweetheart. We thought you were struggling and didn't want to hurt your pride. My pride? I repeated incredulously. You thought it was protecting my pride to label me an embarrassment in front of strangers? Harrison, surprisingly quiet until now, suddenly said, Becky, I've been working on this incredible business idea for an extreme sports social media platform. I just need startup capital. Maybe around $2 or $3 million. And just like that, less than 10 minutes after discovering my wealth, the requests began rolling in. Brenda eagerly chimed in. I found this amazing condo downtown for just $1.5 million. That's nothing for you now. I'll pay you back gradually. Pay me back with what money? Challenged. Last I checked, you were maxed out on your credit cards. Her face flushed. That's why I need this chance. The condo would be an investment. Property values are on the rise. Kelly, inspired by the conversation, stepped up. Becky, I don't know if Harrison mentioned it, but we're discussing marriage. A small wedding would be delightful. Maybe in Tuscany. Some venues there are around $300,000. You want me to fund your wedding? I asked, staring at Harrison. The same brother who mocked my old phone just an hour ago. Harrison appeared slightly ashamed but defended himself. I'm sorry about that. I didn't grasp what you were doing, but now that I do, we ought to support each other's dreams, right? Margaret nodded eagerly. Family money should be family money. That's how it works. You can't just keep all of it to yourself. Their audacity was astonishing. I looked around at the same people who had spent years diminishing my worth, who had belittled and patronized me, standing now with their hands out as if I owed them something. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. Yesterday, my lifestyle was so embarrassing that you apologized to strangers for my behavior. Today, you want me to fund your dreams with the profits from that same embarrassing lifestyle. David stepped forward, wearing his paternal expression. Becky, we're family. We love you. We've always loved you. I burst into laughter. You love my money, I managed between laughs. Just yesterday you were embarrassed by me. Today you love me. The only thing that shifted was that number in my bank account. Harrison, desperate, said, Becky, if you do this, you'll regret it. Family is everything we have. I responded, You're right, Harrison. Family is what we have, which is why it's crucial to choose wisely. The weight of my words sunk in. I wasn't just rejecting their requests. I was cutting ties entirely. You're making a huge mistake, David seethed, his voice cold. You won't forget this. Good, I replied. I hope you remember it every time you consider judging someone based on their appearance or lifestyle choices. Seeing her chance, Patricia tried a different tactic. Becky, think about what your success means for our entire family. We could all be better together. We could have been better all along, I countered. But you chose mockery over support, judgment over curiosity, and assumptions over real conversation. That was your choice. This is mine. I gestured toward the open door. I have work to do. My app doesn't manage itself. And unlike some, I believe in earning what I have. One by one they left, their expressions a mix of shock, anger, and disbelief. Harrison was the last to linger at the door, glancing back at me. This isn't over, Becky. Yes, I said firmly as I closed the door behind him. It is. In the following months, my family encountered the harsh repercussions of their years of poor financial choices and their cruel treatment toward me. Harrison's effort to launch his extreme sports social media platform crashed not long after when investors realized he lacked a real business plan. He burned through his remaining savings seeking venture capital for his half-baked ideas and ended up moving back in with our parents when he could no longer afford rent. Brenda's financial situation quickly worsened without the expected bailout, leading her to declare bankruptcy and move into a studio while juggling 2 part-time jobs to pay off her substantial credit card debt. Meanwhile, Margaret and David came to the stark realization that their retirement dreams were rendered impossible without my financial backing, forcing them to work into their 70s while watching their peers enjoy the vacations they had assumed my wealth would provide. The extended family members who had come with outstretched hands now struggled without the safety net they had taken for granted, learning too late that entitlement combined with poor planning is a toxic mix. That evening, nestled in my home office surrounded by the same simple furnishings that had once been a source of family shame, I reflected on how their mockery had ultimately reinforced my determination and honed my focus on what genuinely mattered. The real revenge wasn't in denying them money. It was in proving that the lifestyle they had belittled was, in truth, the foundation of genuine success and happiness.